Alasdair, hello.
Hello, how are you doing, Sam?
I am doing okay. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm so great. I'm so glad to be here.
That's great. I am also glad. No, I can't do it. I'm not shooting Millie. I tried. I lost it. Sorry, Courtney.
You tried.
I tried.
All good with you? That all good? All good with you?
I'm all good. We've just come off the back of recording a little fun bonus episode about the proms.
The proms. We went to the proms and we hated it. Can you imagine?
Have you ever seen the Netflix musical The Prom?
No.
It's, in theory, and in practice, it is an incredible musical about these Broadway stars who go to like a small town in the Midwest to protest a teenage lesbian who's not being allowed to go to a prom because she's gay. And on paper and in theory, it stars Meryl Streep, it stars Nicole Kidman, it stars Andrew Reynolds. Like, in theory, it's the most incredible movie of all time. But one of the leads is James Corden. And he has a song about going to the prom, and it's like, I'm going to the prom! And like, that's all I could think about when we get ready to go to the prom. So I was like, oh no!
Niche. Deep cut.
Deep cut, but Craig Owens from Doctor Who fame.
We did have a nice time. I've been to the Renaissance tour, and that was my Renaissance tour.
Literally. I've been to Grammatical Ball, and honey, that was it. Well, we're not going to dive into our thoughts here. If you'd like to hear them, you can go back to listen to our bonus episode about the PC proms. But something I am going to dive into instead is a lovely message that got sent to us by a listener.
Oh, what'd they say?
This one isn't so much as a fan anecdote, it's just a really sweet message that I wanted to read out on the pod.
Okay. Go on.
I'm not sure if it's anonymous or not, but I won't read your name just in case. They said, "Hello, boys of Wholala. I found your podcast and started listening just before the new season 14/1. I've binged nearly all the episodes and love it all. My favourite podcast is anything seasons 1 to 4 or Sarah Jane Adventures. Like me, I was 8 or 9 in 2005. I would run home to watch the Sarah Jane Adventures and was a complete outcast in school for loving the Whoniverse. And I'm so pleased now to find people who loved RTD New Who and Stephen Moffat. Thank you for creating this community."
You're so welcome.
That's really sweet.
You're so welcome.
On behalf of Stephen Moffat and Russell T Davies. I would love to request that you review more Sarah Jane Adventures, especially episodes like Invasion of the Bane, Enemy of the Bane, and the Mona Lisa's Revenge. Also, from Doctor Who, Blink, how have you not done this? That's a very good question. How have we not done this? Silence in the Libraries, Part 1 and 2. I agree with your comment on the latest pod that you should do more Matt Smith. Honestly, I was not too fond of Peter Capaldi as the Doctor. But I didn't read this far. I'm about to do deep breath, so I'm sorry for this. I don't think he was a good Doctor, but I will now rewatch with you and listen to your dissection of these episodes. Well, honey, you're in a great episode for it.
They're going to come for you. You're lucky you're anonymous.
We'll keep it anon. I know that you're probably busy and have plans for the podcast, but I thought from a die-hard new fan, I love you guys, you make me laugh, and I shouldn't be in agreement or despair depending on your comments. Ha ha ha. I agree that you should get a Patreon or do live streams and discussions. Lots of love. Oh,
we're really soft launching a Patreon. I promise you guys, we really haven't put that plan together yet.
But people are saying about it.
The demand is there. I don't think either of us have actually even gone as far as Googling the word Patreon yet. So hold your horses.
Another thing people keep asking for is Wholala merch, which I feel like should be on the horizon.
Yeah, I'm torn between, should they just be Jackie Tyler quotes in ugly fonts, or should they be branded? You know,
I like the idea of a pastel purple hoodie with a little embroidered Wholala just on the lapel, something very low key, very subtle.
Something for the autumn. Something for the autumn. Something for the colder days.
What do you think? Let us know.
What are you in the mood for? What do you want us to make? We'll do something for you.
Well, I'm so sorry to that anonymous listener. I did love that message, and it was very, very sweet. We are jumping in with the Capaldi episode.
We are. Buckle up.
I'm actually really excited for this. When I watched it on original air back in ye old 2014, as any of you have told from the title now, we're talking about Deep Breath, which is Peter Capaldi's debut episode. It aired on the 23rd of August 2014, written by Stephen Moffat and directed by Ben Wheatley. It had an overnight viewership of 6.79 million and an IMDb score of 7.8 out of 10. Now, when I originally watched this, I'll never forget, I was on the Isle of Wight, I was on Ollie Bob's, and I was so excited for it. And there was a part of me that I completely missed the script leaks and everything, so I know the script leak, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But I watched it on original air, and there was just a little bit of me, and I think it's probably just the die-hard Matt Smith fan that was just I don't know what I was expecting, but that wasn't really what I was expecting. And it's not one that I've gone back to rewatch often. I have rewatched it. But I always had a bit of I don't know, vibe. Off the back of just watching it today, I loved it. I thought it was so fun.
Yeah. That's a great thought. I watched it in the BFI And I think it was before it was on TV release. And so they did a premiere at the BFI. Which BFI?
South Bank?
Sure. And it was in the same room as Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat, who were both there. And there was one of the BBC producers and a few others. And then at the end, Peter Capaldi and Jenna Coleman turned up and they did a Q&A. People queued for pictures. I queued in the wrong spot. I didn't get a picture. I was very upset. But I remember the sound in the BFI was awful. And same as it was actually at the proms. Whenever there's any like reverb or bass added to Peter Capaldi's voice, I can't hear what he's saying. And I'm really sorry to say this, but I need subtitles for him sometimes. On normal TV with a soundbar, absolutely able to hear what he's saying. In the proms hall, in the Royal Albert Hall, when he was doing his, he was doing it. I don't know what that was. He just doesn't sound like that. He did his speech from Flatline, where he's like,
I'm the man who defeats the monsters.
Then I must play mine. And
what the fuck was that?
It seems you are determined to play the role of a monster.
Lass and hair, you wee lassie. If you're a monster, then I'm the bloody doctor. I'm going to fight you.
The man who stops the monsters. I can't do a Capaldi. Anyway,
I can't do it either, but that's just entertaining to listen to.
That was awful. Anyway, podcast just got cancelled. He's quite hard to decipher, and a lot of sentences in this episode, a lot of the really good lines, completely lost on me because all I heard was. So, like, for example, when he's laying in bed and he's translating the dinosaur, all I heard was. I was like, shit, I don't know what he's saying.
And it's a really lovely line about like being alone and lonely, and you just heard,
didn't get it.
Clara.
That was all I heard. That was it.
Oh,
and I got a lot of bits, but not a lot of it.
No. Well, I definitely enjoyed this a lot more. I feel like, and I've said it on the pod before, I mean, Chris Eccleston's era is very much like a one and done. You kind of always will watch it as a complete body of work. But 10 and 11, I feel like it's a lot more Monster of the Week. You can dip in and out. It's fun to dip in and out. Capaldi and Jodie's era, I feel like you enjoy so much more when you look at it as a body of work and you know the direction it's going. I feel like that is where, people, started falling off the show a bit after Matt Smith's era. People were falling off the show a bit more during Jodie's era. And I feel like as time goes on and we go more into this like Walt Disney Studios Doctor Who, I feel like the renaissance for this era and Jodie's era is only going to grow stronger and stronger, and people will only remember it more and more fondly. Like that's certainly been the case with me. Like, I mean, we did our Capaldi episode about a year ago, and we got kind of ripped into it because we weren't the kindest to it. And I feel like the more I watch, the more I'm going to be like, wow, amazing, incredible.
I think there's so many great moments inside this. I think there are moments when he stands out as like one of the top 5 all-time doctors. I think there's a lot to be said that is fair about criticizing this era as well.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
It's really a mixed bag for me, and I'll come on to that. My overall feelings and a bit more context about the season when we get to that.
Yeah, well, before we get to that, I thought I'd give you a quick recap of the episode. It's on iPlayer for anyone who wants to listen to it, but in case you haven't seen it in a while, here is a recap of the story.
Marking the debut of the 12th Doctor, the story begins in Victorian London, where a giant T-Rex has unexpectedly appeared in the River Thames. The Paternoster gang are quick on the scene, led by the Silurian Madame Vastra and her companions Jenny Flint and Strax, and soon see the dinosaur cough up a familiar blue box, landing on the riverbank. The Doctor comes out of the TARDIS, bemused and erratic post-regeneration. Clara also pops out, puzzled and frustrated at this new regeneration.
As the Doctor sleeps to recover after his regeneration, Clara is confronted by Vastra after seeming to judge the Doctor's new appearance, noting that she wears her veil out of judgment of others, a veil she's now wearing in front of Clara. After proving that she knows he's the Doctor and that she doesn't care if he's changed, Vastra's veil is lifted and they're ready to solve the case of the dinosaur. The Doctor sneaks out to speak to it, because of course he speaks dinosaur, but soon it sets ablaze and dies.
The Doctor suspects foul play and becomes determined to uncover the truth behind the so-called spontaneous combustion, while at the same time trying to work out why he recognises his new face. Meanwhile, Clara and the gang try to track down the Doctor, and do so after seeing a mysterious advert in the paper calling out for the Impossible Girl. She meets the Doctor in a restaurant after each assuming the other listed the advert and realising it was neither of them.
They soon realise, however, that the people in the restaurant are robots who don't breathe, looking to harvest human parts. They get brought below the fake restaurant and face the half-faced man, leader of the Clockwork Droids, and realise they're on an ancient spaceship that was stranded on Earth. The Doctor realises the spaceship was powered by human energy, and its crew have been trying to reach a promised land by killing and replacing their organic parts with machinery.
The Doctor escapes the room with the droids, leaving Clara behind to fend for herself. Realising they struggle to see anyone who isn't breathing, she holds her breath to stay hidden. She holds her breath for as long as she can, but eventually passes out and is captured by the Clockwork Droids. She tells them that the Doctor will always have her back, and he reveals himself disguised as a droid. He follows the half-faced man upstairs, and he realises that the restaurant is a hot air balloon created using the skin of their victims.
The Doctor warns him that he thinks he'll have to kill him, though it's against his moral code. The half-faced man insists that he's heading to the Promised Land, though the Doctor tells him it doesn't exist. It's revealed that the droids are from the SS Marie Antoinette, sister ship of the SS Madame de Pompadour, and their confrontation ends with the half-faced man falling to his death on Big Ben, though it's unclear if he jumped or was pushed.
After a quick costume change and sprucing up the TARDIS, the Doctor returns for Clara. She tells him that she doesn't know who he is anymore, and he offers to take her home. Suddenly, her phone rings, and he tells her to answer it. It could be her boyfriend. She answers the phone, and it's the 11th Doctor moments before his death. He tells her to care for his new incarnation and look after him, and he's more scared than she is. After looking into his eyes, she realises that of course it's the same man as before, and they walk away together, ready for whatever the future holds.
No. I feel like we end every recap with a no.
No, that's nice. That's nice, isn't it? That's nice.
Well, look, before we dive into our thoughts on the episode, we reached out to you on our X account at HulaPod and asked you what you thought, and here is what some of you had to say.
Matt at Stradihuvius, great comment, I love this one. For me, it's the best and closest examination about what it means to the Doctor to regenerate. He's a new person, but Deep Breath says stronger than most that it's still him. Great music too. I often play Hello Hello when I'm pacing through train stations. Me too. I used to play Hello Hello, and maybe there's another one. I can't remember what it is. It was like Pudding Brains or something. There's something else from this era anyway, and I used to play it walking around uni campus, which is late.
At 22 Jensen09 says, it's not a jumping on point, it's a continuation and expansion of Moffat Who, character study of the Doctor, and symbolic of 12's tenure. It used to be everything I didn't like about 12. Now it's the opposite, one of the strongest opening episodes. That, I think, is very true to my experience of watching this, where I wasn't that keen on it before, and I did feel like it doesn't feel like a jumping on point. It felt very much like a continuation of what will come before, which I also stand by. But now I love it, and I think it's a really, really good opener.
Danatella Versace said, underrated, loved every reference to SS Madame de Pompadour, and I thought it was a great starting episode for Capaldi and the phone call from Time of the Doctor. Absolutely brilliant writing, one of my favourite season openers ever.
Now, this person and you have something in common because you both were at the premiere and Q&A.
Oh, really?
Dalton says, at the time, I loved it. I got to see it at the premiere with a cast Q&A. Remember my mum and Nan having a girls' day when we and my dad went to watch it. With the biased feelings aside, Clara just went through the Doctor's timeline and met all of them, so what's her beef with 12? I'm not too keen on Strax being played for laugh. He's much more interesting for him to just be a decent Centaurian. But I do like the Doctor asking why this is his face, and finding out Liz Sladen's husband played the homeless man made me cry the next time I watched it. Also, hello, Missy. That is, I was going to save that for my fun facts, but it is so cute. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Oh my God, I was going to save this until my section, but Brian Miller, who is Elizabeth Sladen's husband, he plays the homeless man when Capaldi's like looking in the water, like, who am I? Oh, it's so sad. I love it. And this was obviously post her death as well. Yeah, Sadie Miller's dad.
You know what, as well? Actually, great actor. Like, I really felt like he ate that scene.
Do you know what's really cute is he had a different role, obviously, in the Sarah Jane Adventures on screen against Liz.
Really?
Yeah, he played the caretaker in the episode. Do you remember the red alien that like mind controlled Rani at the playground?
Oh, not very well.
He was the caretaker there.
How lovely. How lovely. Well, Dalton, we were both there, and we didn't even know that one day we'd be doing a podcast about this, and you'd be giving us your thoughts, and I'd be reading it out. But here we are.
Exactly.
How lovely.
There you go.
Let's do a couple more. Laura said, that speech Clara does, where she says that the Doctor wouldn't make his friend scares or words to that effect, is one of my favourite moments. On first watch, I was in the cinema for it, actually. We were all over the place. Where were you again? You were Isle of Wight.
I was on the Isle of Wight.
BFI. We were bloody everywhere. I maybe didn't love it, but now it's a defo solid opener. Still unsure how I feel about the 11 camera, though. The 11 camera? cameo. Oh, they did follow it up. I was like, camera angle? Cameo. How you didn't feel about it? Yeah, that makes sense. We'll come on to that.
Yeah. Hamish says, I personally really like it, but I feel like every Doctor's first episode should try and bring in new viewers. And I feel that the presence of the Paternosters, who I love, I'm a Crimson Horror truther. Thank you so much, Hamish. Me too.
Sure.
And some of 12's characterizations, again, love, favourite modern Doc, is a bit off-putting to newbies. My parents are big Thick of It fans and were excited to watch this, but then never watch the show again. Interesting. Interesting.
Okay, I'm so ready to jump in. I'm going to set the scene first for you. This, okay. I remember, came at a really funny time for me because I think it was my last year of sixth form and I was just moving into uni. Well, in fact, what month did this come out?
This was August, and this was just before.
God, this was right before I went to uni. So I think I'd wrapped up my exams and everything by then. And we'd had not that long ago Time of the Doctor, Day of the Doctor, and I think I thought because they were all such big cinematic simulcast cinema events that it was going to be this really big renaissance moment for Doctor Who, because I think even back then I had this awareness that my friends didn't talk about watching Doctor Who anymore. It was kind of just me and the diehards on Twitter, and I really wanted it to become like a big show that everyone watched again, and I thought maybe this was that turning point because I was also familiar with Peter Capaldi from Thick of It, and his announcement was such a big deal. They did that special reveal show. Do you remember? I remember where I was. It was at my aunt's house when they did it, and she did the Peter Capaldi, and out he came, which now when I think about it, it reminds me so much of that one clip of Jeremy Corbyn. But
oh my God.
Someone put those clips side by side. But I don't think this era was as well received as what they'd hoped it would be. It's weird because it's not a jumping on point, and I don't think they really tried to make it a jumping on point. It's very much a continuation. And it doesn't try to, all right, we've got Capaldi, new era, new fans, let's bring in some newbies. It almost assumes, well, you'll have seen the 50th and you'll have seen Time of the Doctor and you'll have understood those storylines. And so it just sort of carries on, and it doesn't feel like it has a huge amount of newness to it. And I think for a show that felt like it was potentially already in decline, I think I'd hoped that this would be the big resurgence. And I think a lot of people around that time felt that Capaldi's gravitas was what was going to bring people back around, and that if Christopher Eccleston had been able to sort of relaunch the show as a very serious actor with a lot of kind of, grit and a darkness, then that's what was needed now to kind of maybe invigorate it a bit more with the adult fans.
I think I kind of had a different intention going into this, because I don't feel like every Doctor has to be this clean jumping on point. I think with like Ncuti's era, for example, because the show has undeniably been in quite a decline, they wanted this to be like a fresh new, like, hey, don't worry if you haven't seen anything for ages, you can jump on here and it'd be great. But I feel like some of the best times the show has done is when it hasn't been a soft launch, when it has just been a continuation of the story before. So I'm thinking of like the second Doctor from the first Doctor, I'm thinking of the fourth Doctor from the third Doctor, I'm thinking of the 10th Doctor from the 9th Doctor. Like, some of the best Doctors in the whole era of the show were continuations of what had come before and weren't sold as like a soft reboot. I know that when I went into this, I was hoping for a level of familiarity, and I really liked that they had the Paternoster gang in it, because I really wasn't sold on Capaldi's casting. I really, really liked Matt Smith, and Matt Smith's era I definitely think was a jumping on point. It was a soft reboot for the show, and I feel like I needed my hand held, even to the extent of with the phone call at the end. I personally really liked all that, but it's a double-edged sword in that I think that it's difficult to open a series and open a new Doctor with returning characters who are a lesbian lizard, a potato man, and her girlfriend. And it kind of made it difficult for people who wanted to jump on at that point, hard to jump on. For someone who had continued watching the show, you're like relying on these characters as crutches. So I feel like I didn't really give myself to this new Doctor. And much as I liked the Matt Smith phone call at the end, it then made me, certainly at the time, and even a tiny bit watching it now, I was like, oh, there's the Doctor. There he is.
Yeah.
And oh, he's gone now. Oh, like...
Yeah. I felt it for me backfires, that scene. I know people love it, but watching it then as well, I found myself missing Matt Smith in the same way. And I hadn't even watched a Matt Smith episode prior, and I was still like, oh, Matt. And it's like we're at the end now of an episode that's meant to make me feel really enthusiastic about the Capaldi Doctor, and I think rounding it off with this really bittersweet, sad that Matt Smith's gone, isn't it? For me, almost like brought me back to like, oh God, I miss him. I don't know. I think they really played up the contrast between Matt Smith's Doctor and Peter Capaldi's Doctor. I wonder if they played it up almost too much, because they make Capaldi sound at, what was he then? Maybe 57 or something. They made him sound haggard. The way they talk about like his wrinkled face, whose wrinkles are those? Oh, who frown with his face? Look at these attacks.
I'm a grey.
Who is that old man? Who is that grey old man? Is he old? Oh, I got old. I'm like, this guy isn't that old. Like, he's not dying.
Literally. They really do treat him like that.
They do. And I know that the point wasn't meant to just be that he got older. The point was his character had changed. And that was part of what was shocking for Clara, was that his character was different too. It was the personality shift. And you had to believe it was the same man, despite kind of a more gruff exterior and different behavior. So anyway, we can come back around to that. But I mean, in terms of how it felt, I think transitioning from one era to the next, it almost felt like Smith into Capaldi are such different interpretations of the Doctor that side by side, it's quite jarring. And it almost feels, I think we said this before, a dream order would almost be, in terms of a natural personality progressing over the years, would be like 9, 12, 11, 10, 15. Like,
I feel like
rejig it.
Okay, no, I've got it. It's 9, 12, 10, 15, 11, 13, and I'm not counting 14.
Brilliant. Exactly. Oh, yeah, take him out. He's had enough. I think that's kind of the order I'm thinking. And you just have a natural progression towards lightness towards the end. So you begin with, all right, if you want orders, have this one. And you end with, fam. So I think that that makes sense for me.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like also with Doctor Who had quite a young viewership in general with the new era. And I remember there was a whole big like discourse online of like, the Doctor can't be old, the Doctor can't be old. And I feel like this was kind of the show's way of proving like, no, he can. And he has been and he will be again. And it was almost like a deliberate casting in the opposite of what people expected. But then when people didn't digest that as well as they might have hoped, I think that definitely had a part of it.
It felt like they'd made their choice and then they spent an hour 15 defending their decision. Do you know what I mean? And it was
a little bit, yeah.
It was so like we need Clara to react badly so that we can handhold the audience through this terrible change.
Yeah.
That it almost, I think, over-egged how jarring a transition it was. I don't know.
I mean, it made it more jarring than it was. I mean, I don't know about you. I kind of prefer the like post-regeneration Bumble 12 to what he is at the end of the episode, because I feel like what he is at the beginning is actually more where the character ended up in like series, 9, series 10, where when he's like talking to my big girlfriend, lady friend, I'm not flirting, it's not what you think, like that 12, who then later like has the sonic sunglasses and rides in on the tank playing the electric guitar, like that's the 12 that I love. And I feel like this grumpy 12 that they were like kind of pushing at the end of this episode, like at them when he's like, Clara, I've lived a long life, not all of them are good, and I was just like, oh, like this isn't the 12 that I like, this isn't the 12 I relate to.
I think when he plays up a more exaggerated sarcasm and a dryness, and he's quite blunt but does it in a really kind of in your face kind of way, it plays better as humor, and it's obvious that it's a facade for someone who does really care. In this one, when it's almost a little more emo, best way I can describe it, sorry, is it just felt a bit like, oh, what? So there was parts in this one, I mean, it's not in this episode, it's in the next one. There's that line that I always come back to that I really, really hate, when it was like, they turn up in the Into the Dalek episode, and he's like, oh, this is Clara, she's my carer, that means that she cares so I don't have to. Oh. I was like, I hate that. I really, really hate that. And I know it's like a joke, it's not serious, the Doctor's helping out, of course he is, but it just felt like having been with, Matt Smith, just a traveller passing through, helping where I can. Oh, hey, here we go. And then on to, I don't know, kind of like really weary of the universe and very introspective, very, am I a good man? Why am I here? Do I make the universe better or worse? And it almost made that arc the whole like, am I a good man arc feel to me a little bit too self-indulgent. It was such a deep analysis of the character of the Doctor that I found it a bit dull.
No, I think that's very, very fair. I think what is interesting about this episode is for something where I think they were trying to do so much new stuff with the character of the Doctor, but also rely on like the cruxes of what had come before. I didn't really realize how many callbacks there were, I think, in original viewing. It's not until I watched it and kind of like paid attention that I noticed. So the bit when he is coming out the TARDIS and regenerating, that was so emblematic to me of when 10 had regenerated out of 9 with Jackie, where they're like, well, Strax like, who is this? And Clara's like, it's the Doctor. And they're like, what do you mean this is the Doctor? And it felt so like emblematic of that scene. And I really love the line that Vastra says when it kind of slowly pans in on her and she goes, well, here we go again. And then at the very end of the episode, the tail end, when the Doctor's like, oh, what do you want to do now? Like, do you want to go get coffee? Do you want to go get chips? And Clara's like, coffee, but you can pay. And he's like, I don't have any money. Like, it's almost a word for word redo of the scene with 9 and Rose. And it's that exact scene again where they're like on a nondescript street, could be anywhere. And it's the moment the companion realizes they can trust this man who they don't really know.
Yes.
And I don't know how, I'm sure it was intentional, but like I didn't quite realize just how much it almost, I don't want to say like relies on the crux of previous seasons, but it harpens back to other seasons.
The thing that I did really like that they did with his character that did keep me on my toes was there's a moment where I think he's kind of testing Clara and Clara's loyalty to him, which is where they're trying to escape the Clockwork Droids. They are both kind of shuffling around. She's like, come on, open the door, let me through. And he starts to sonic it and then stops and then looks at her through the window, looks at her dead in the eyes and is like, no time. And she's like, well, give me the sonic then. And he's like, I might need it. And then he runs off and he leaves her. And he really like gives her like a long look. And then it's almost like he's trying to convince her, like, you're on your own. Like, you are really on your own. And now what are you going to do? Like, show me how well you can work. And that was quite an interesting dynamic shift. It's also really cruel. And I think it's easy to just misread that as, well, now he's just a cold doctor. He's no longer, the warm friend that she had before. This is now just some guy who no longer feels the same way about her. But it's interesting that he's, I think, testing her that way, and you have to learn to trust him again, because then when she does put her hand back and says, I know I'll have my back, of course he does. So that kept me on my toes a little bit.
It's a really nerve-wracking scene, that scene. I feel like when you're watching, especially for the first time, you really, because you don't know who this man is, you really don't know what he's going to do. And then once you see it in the context of this series, I just think I agree with what you're saying about it being cruel as well, in that, like, he just keeps doing it to her. Like in Kill the Moon, he does it again, where he's like, well, you're on your own, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. Yeah. But I love, it does allow, because Clara in, like, Series 7B is just written like such a, like, I think flitty side character. She doesn't really have tons of substance to her. In Series 9 and Series 8 are the two seasons where, like, we obviously really get into the depths of it. And Series 8 is where she's really grafted like a companion for the eras, in my mind. And I love, off the back of that, the scene where she's alone with the Clockwork Droid and she kind of thinks back to what's happened to her with the school. And she's like, you're going from a bigger threat to a smaller threat. And you really see Jenna Coleman's acting in this. Like, she, even when she's just trying to hold her breath and she's like sweating and like crying, but in that bit when she's like hyperventilating a bit, but she's like, I am really, really scared, but of course I'm scared because this has happened. But like, even when she's being emotional, I really like that it shows that you can be emotional, but that doesn't make you weaker. She is not holding back her emotions. She's not pretending to be unemotional, which is exactly what the Doctor's doing. He's showing his strength and his stoicness, whereas she's saying, I am strong, I will hold my own, but I will not pretend to not be scared. I will not pretend to not be upset. And I think that is like a complete flip of the coin to like the Doctor and the companion in that moment. And that, I think, is really, really smart writing.
Yes, I like that as well. And almost it's as well a moment of her going, right, what does the Doctor do in this situation? Talk his way out of it. And it's an early version of, the whole, like, Clara becoming the Doctor story. It's sowing a very early seed for that, because she has a moment here to show off her kind of, go on, like, let's see what you can do on your own. And so she tries talking out of a situation on her own, how the Doctor would. And of course, she can't quite do it with the same flair that he would. So of course, when then the Doctor reveals his face, it's like, oh, and then he puts up the, flamethrower into his face, and he just sort of slaps it out of his hand and just goes, oh, don't be silly. And then he whirs the Sonic, and he does something else, and he just, commands the room immediately, and it highlights the contrast, between the two of them.
Yeah.
The only funny thing about that scene was Clara's memories of being a school teacher and using classroom psychology with a half-faced man. The Paternoster gang were upstairs. They were on.
They were just like ear to the ground, like waiting for the signal.
They're like, I don't know, it sounds funny. Like, I think she's in trouble. And she's like, I didn't say the word. So that slightly confused me, because all of that, like, oh my God, this is it. Like, this is it. I'm on my own. I'm going to die. Well, no, there were 3 people upstairs with swords that were waiting for the word, and they would have jumped in. So that slightly confused me after the fact.
Yeah, it's like a fun callback. I do like that she's like, oh God, and he's like, say it. She's like, no, I don't want to say it. Say it. And they go, Geronimo. And it's like kind of like death to the 11th Doctor. And
that was still nice. That was still nice.
Oh, it's still cute. And I do like it. And like when he comes out of the disguise, that's my moment where I'm like, oh, the Doctor has arrived. Like the Doctor's in now.
Yes.
And I also really love the line where she says, if the Doctor is still the Doctor, then he will have my back. But she doesn't even really believe it. She says, please, God, say I'm right.
She's guessing. Yeah, she doesn't have full faith. And I think there's a fun fact. You may already have this one, but isn't the face he pulls off a model of Matt Smith's face?
So basically, again, I was going to say it's fun facts, but I've got a lot of fun facts.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I love diving in. They made a mask of like a Clockwork Droid man that he used, and they did one take, and you very rarely use the first take, and he like ripped it in half, so they weren't able to use it for other takes. And the only thing they had kind of lying around to hand was a cast of Matt Smith's face that they had from the Doctor Who experience, I think. And they got hold of that, and then he used that for the other takes. And it was Nikki Wilson who was actually saying in a behind-the-scenes video for the BBC that it's like an unintentional symbolism of the Doctor literally ripping off his previous face in that scene, which I think is really fun.
It's really funny. Another thing I wanted to shout out, I know this is too much of a pivot, but the humor in this episode I actually think was really funny. I was laughing out loud throughout this story. And I don't know if, for me, I do think this story, it's a long one. It's an hour 15, which is unusual. I think what's nice about a longer episode of Who, which I like, is, have I said that clearly enough yet, that I really like, is that we get more time for slightly extended conversations and pieces of dialogue that I think would have otherwise been on the cutting room floor. We get. And so the whole scene where they both find each other in a restaurant is like a relatively long scene, and I love when we just get time to have conversations between characters. And that whole sequence of them meeting up again and her being like, where'd you get that coat? And he's like, in a shop. And she's like, where do you really get it? She's like, might be in a tramp. She's like, right. And she's like, oh, there's a smell. And he's like, yeah, it's been following me all day.
It's so, this is one thing I do love about this episode as well, like you were saying, it's so funny. And I do think the Paternoster gang bring like a certain humor to this as well. Like the iconic scene, I mean, no one can not talk about it, where Strax is like, the Times, shall I send it up? And Clara's like, yeah, go on then. And he just throws it at her and poof. And like, there is no reason for it to be in this episode. There is no kind of slapstick humour like that. Well, you know the bit when Vastra, I also like that Vastra, because she's a Scottish actress, but she's putting on an English accent when she's playing Vastra.
Yes.
And then when she picks up that the Doctor thinks they all sound weird, she puts on a Scottish accent, which is really her real accent. And she's saying to him like, oh, can you project an image of sleep into my head? And she tricks him into doing that to put the Doctor to sleep. And you get this really weird like sound effect when he does it. And it's so weird. Like, it's funny, but it's weird.
I think the humor in this really works. The Times, shall I say that, is actually the funniest thing they've ever done in Doctor Who, and I'm actually willing to defend this. I said to Josh, like a good 5 minutes before it happened, right? I was like, "You're about to get the best gag they've ever done in Doctor Who." He's like, "Oh my god, what?" And then the Times, shall I send it up? Yeah, why not? Yeah.
It's iconic. It's stupid and iconic.
It's the way that immediately transitions into the gentlest version of Clara's theme possible as she descends the stairs gracefully with her beautiful hair. Something about the thwack going straight into Clara's theme is comedy gold to me.
Yeah.
And I like the way, I mean, is this around Clara's character development? Maybe. But they really start, for no reason, to just shred that girl to pieces. Nothing is more important than my egomania. Right, you actually just said that.
Vastra needs to cut Clara a fucking break
Oh,
in this
yeah.
episode. Because she, like, has just gone through this whole traumatic thing. She's just come off of, like, the battlefields of Trenzalore. Her best friend in the whole world has changed into this man she doesn't even recognise. And all she does is kind of, like, acknowledge that. And she says, like, right, how do we change it back? I do feel like there is a little bit of, like, you can't do a storyline where Clara sees every single generation of the Doctor ever and has just had a multi-Doctor story. And then it's like, what do you mean you changed? That is weird, and I get that. But the second she's kind of like, right, what do we do? How do we change it back? Like, something's wrong with the Doctor. Vastra's like, I fear there's a stranger in the group. And I'm like, cut her a break.
Yeah.
Like, it's
She's
so...
like,
yeah.
sorry, actually, what did you just say? Did I do something wrong? And she's like...
Clara ate, though. Clara snaps back. She's like, Vastra's obviously telling her about how, like, she's an awful person, how she judges people's hearts and da-da-da-da. And she's like, and don't think because my pretty face has turned your eye. And I was like, oh my God, her wife is right there. Like, oh.
Yeah. The relationship between Jenny and Vastra, sorry to tangent for a minute.
Baby, this whole conversation is one tangent after the other.
This whole thing's one tangent. The relationship between the two of them, like, great, love it, representation on screen, brilliant. And I love the way they play the characters, fantastic. They have such a hierarchical relationship in a way that I always quiz because I think it's written by Stephen Moffat and he is the horniest writer of all time. And something about the scene, for example, where Jenny is posing, stood perfectly still for half an hour, and then Vastra flips the board around and it's not a painting, it's just her connecting the dots. And she's like, why was I posing then? And it kind of feels like a lesbian relationship written from the gaze of a straight man. Like, I feel that as him really, on some level, making it, and why am I playing your maid and pouring your tea then? And hush now, darling. And I just found it all a little bit, because it's such a strictly hierarchical relationship. And I feel like they tried to make it a little bit, I'm the dominant lizard and she's my hot, submissive lesbian human. And I don't know, there's something about it.
It's annoying because you do have, like, moments in there. So I really like the moment where Clara doesn't want to say she loves the Doctor and she's like, what would happen if, something like that happened to someone that you liked? And Jenny is the one that says, I don't like her, Mum. I love her. And, like, little moments like that, I'm like, oh, that's nice. But then you're completely right that, like, I really don't love the scene where she's like, I can't breathe, Mum. I can't hold my breath. And then she's like, don't worry, I can store oxygen. Come. And you get this thing that the Doctor who, like, push. They're like, oh, it's a lesbian kiss with Zonglis, la la la. And I'm like, the lizard lady breathed her oxygen sacs down Jenny's throat, and, like, we're meant to, like, be like, yay, inclusion. Like, I don't know. I don't know.
I feel a really similar way. I said this in our Queer Universe one a long time ago, and I was like, I don't know if, like, interspecies lesbian is the way I want to see it done the first time. And the one other horny line is then I think Clara burst into the room, maybe even during this painting scene, and Vastra's like, oh, Clara, excellent. Pop your clothes on the chair. And she's like, what? And it's literally just like a sex gag. And it's just a bit like, I don't know, it's so out of place. It's so out of place. It's so just like, oh, Clara, since you're here, I'd love to bang you. And it's like, what? Like, in the presence of my wife, I just think you're so fit and I'd love to see you naked, is the undertone of that joke. And I don't know why it's there other than to do a funny about, like, I don't know, like horny lesbians. I didn't quite get it for me. Like, am I wrong? I think I may be being a stickler there and I should just maybe have a bit more fun with these lines and just enjoy it for what it is.
No, I agree. For me, it's double-edged sword where, like you mentioned it earlier, this episode, because of the length, you have certain scenes that, like, I love that we get all these extra scenes with these characters, and I feel like the episode is really expanded with the length, but there are scenes where I'm like, I can imagine this being cut for time. You do get really fun lines like, oh, is this a hat? It's hair. No, I'm pretty sure it's a hat. Can I check? But then, like, there's certain scenes like Vastra scanning Clara, and even like the go on, throw the times up, and Jenny posing for the life story, that I'm like, these probably would have been cut if the episode was going to be 45 minutes. And I think it's difficult because then there are scenes with, like, Vastra and Clara that are so lovely. Like at the end when Clara's like, oh, you got room for one more. And Vastra very sincerely is like, we would be very grateful and love for you to join our family. But I think the Doctor's coming back for you soon. And you get moments like that, but then you get tacked on the like, right, Clara, through, close her quick as you like da 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 da. And it's like, ugh, you can't just have those two together like that.
It's hard to marry up those two things. That's what I mean. And it's not, and I think on the whole, I like Jenny and Vastra, and I really like the way they're played.
I'm not saying there's not space in Doctor Who for sex jokes and for dirty humour. Or silly humour. Like, I like the one where, you know, they're bickering about the Sonic being rolled, and he's like, don't let it roll away. And she's like, well, next time make one that doesn't roll. Like, little lines like that. It's really funny. And I do like the Amy line as well. Yeah, no, those are really funny. I love, like, the bit with the Doctor's like, there's no pictures. Have you got a children's menu? Like, those things. It's really, really funny. But, like, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird balance of, like, really funny slapstick and then serious scenes.
The contrast is what's funny. I mean, maybe it was humour for Clara to enjoy too, and I'm just reading it a level too deep. It read to me as a joke that satisfied Moffat deeply as he typed it.
Yeah.
But I mean, for the most part, I think the humour works really well. The joke about Amy's long legs actually I think was funny when, you know, Clara's struggling to grab the Sonic with her feet, and 12 is like, oh, times like this I miss Amy. And she's like, what? I guess I'm more sympathetic when it's her having difficulty accepting that 11 is gone and the replacement isn't anything like him. It's like she's always had, despite meeting all these other doctors, she's always been able to go back to her doctor. And it even feels for a moment that maybe in the time of the Doctor, it looks like her doctor's fine again. Like right before he turns into Capaldi, he looks young again. And it's almost like that kind of reset end of the episode. Everything's fine in the end, but actually this is a permanent change now and he's gone. How do you feel about the way she handled it?
It's a double-edged sword in that I do think there's a part of me that thinks you have gone through all these other regenerations and you've seen all this stuff, and why does this one feel so different? But then when you just take 2 seconds, think about it, it's obvious, because in this they say Clara's 27, she's our age, she's only 27 years old, and in all those other times where she's met all those other doctors, she even says it in The Day of the Doctor, like when talking about the Doctor destroying all of Gallifrey, she's crying and the Doctor's like, why, what's going on? Like, I've told you about this, you know this happened. She went, I know, but I never imagined it was you doing it. And she's seen all these doctors and she's met 10, met all this, met War, but she's always had her doctor. She's always had 11 to go back to. Like, he's always been there with her. And, you know, they've joked about, like, the boyfriend-girlfriend dynamic. And 12 says in this, like, I'm not saying it was your mistake. I think the Doctor was playing into it as well. But she's mourning someone who will not come back. And I think that, like you said, it's not so much the old thing as it is the character thing, where even though it's the same man and she sees at the end that it is the same person, the Doctor that she knew is dead. And much as I do think there is an element of like, oh, I don't want to be missing 11, I want to be looking forward to 12. It is a really nice scene at the end where the Doctor calls her to kind of like check in that she's okay and also tell her like, it's me, I need you to help me. And it's the line at the end that always gets me. It's when he goes, bye Clara, miss ya. And that's like the last we see of 11. And it's the last we've seen of 11 at all. Like, I feel like 11 has come back at some point. I think maybe because we live in a world where David Tennant's come back so much. That was the last time we ever saw Matt Smith on screen in Doctor Who.
I'm so ready for his return. And every year that passes, I get sadder because these actors get older and it gets harder to do. I know with him, it's trends of law. He can come back at any point. But yeah, I'd like him back very much.
There's also a bit in it. I went, wow, 11 would have hated Jodie Whittaker. There's a bit where he's like, the man you're with, the man I hope you are with. I'm like, wow, you do not want to regenerate into a woman at all.
Doesn't even consider it.
Doesn't even consider it. Oh, God.
I love that this episode does this. You know, we've come off the back of doing School Reunion, and in School Reunion, we said it was almost the perfect examination of the relationship between the Doctor and the companion, which has remained, you know, a timeless revisit because it remains so true now for every Doctor and companion relationship that's gone since. And it's a great examination, I think, this episode of the really weird psychology, philosophy that goes behind the idea of being the same soul in a new body. And Moffat cooks with some of his lines here. That one part about you probably can't even remember where you got that face from, holding up the plate to the robot and seeing his own face reflected back. The joke about don't look in that mirror, it's furious is so good. Who frowned me? This face is a crazy line. And telling the story about the broom as well. Like, you know, you replace the handle, you replace the broom. Is it the same broom? Of course it's not.
I can only think of the ship of Theseus. Whenever anything like that comes up, that's all like, WandaVision.
Exactly, that's what it is.
I can think about.
It's a simplified version of that. Is it the same? And he's describing himself in a way that it's like, you are and you aren't the same person anymore. And that I thought was really interesting. I guess it doesn't really come to a conclusion within that story.
That bugged me a bit as well, especially, not so much now we've seen his era in total, but on original view, he's asking the question, like, we as the audience know that he's been this, like, this face has been in Doctor Who before, and he's seen this face. He's actually been in Doctor Who twice already before by that point. And me as the audience at the time was like, well, why are you? Well, why are you? And we do find out later in the series, it's like, it's because I made a promise, it's to remember, blah, 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 blah. But we don't get an answer in this episode, and I remember that bugged me when I originally watched it.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose the answer is Clara looks into his eyes and she can see the same man, but it's meant to be ambiguous and a question for us. I like how his big moment, his big I'm the Doctor opener moment contrasts so much with what we've seen other Doctors do. We had 10 fighting the Sycorax, we had 11 scaring off a Traxi, we had 13 taking a leap of faith from a crane, we had 15 pulling down a goblin ship with magic gloves. And in this one, his big character moment was kind of one of us is lying about whether they're a killer or whether they're able to kill themselves. And I think we both know who that is. Then pours a big glass of scotch and sort of leaves you wondering whether he just killed someone.
Yeah.
So it sets up a very dark season asking some of these difficult moral questions. I still feel that series, I don't know that those are questions I wanted asked.
Even just the fact that he was pouring the scotch and he said something like, I think I'm going to have to kill you. I wanted to offer you a drink first. I know that I'd want one. I was like, but the Doctor doesn't drink. Like, the Doctor's always not drunk. Like, that's something we know.
Spitting out wine and...
He's spitting out wine and it's disgusting. Like, and I don't think that changes into relationships. Like, the Doctor always says, like, never eat pears. And I think there's certain things that tie. And I just always found that a bit weird. And it felt a bit like they were trying to be like, Doctor Who's grown up now. We're grown up.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, like...
Yes. I feel the same. If you imagine any other Doctor delivering if I was going to be killed, I'd want one. Can you imagine 13 being like, thought I'd pour you a drink. Think if I was going to be killed, I'd want one. And she's poured out like a big scotch. And like, you'd be like, what are you doing?
No. I can exactly imagine her saying that, but it's like a pineapple juice.
It's that, but she's
straw.
Literally got out 2 Ribena cartons. Like, that's the difference.
If I was going to have to end your life, I think I'd want a drink. And she pulls out a Capri Sun and sticks the straw in and like pushes it across the table.
That would be the gag. I think actually getting out like a vintage scotch, I can't think of, I mean, maybe some of this is where as well, this character is interesting because Capaldi's Doctor is a blend. Classic new Doctor brings in different elements. Because if you then say, could you imagine maybe the 4th Doctor doing that? Could maybe the 6th Doctor do that? I'm like, yeah, maybe. Like, maybe it's a bit more plausible for some of the classics to do that. So maybe that's where it feels different, is that this is fresh for the new era.
It really was a blend of the old and the new, I feel, yeah.
Yeah.
One quick thing I think when I watched the episode, and I also think it for the Crimson Horror, is this felt very much like a soft pilot for a Paternoster Gang spin-off that didn't happen. And I'm so curious as to why it didn't happen, because it really did feel like in like sort of 2012, 2013, 2014, that this was the direction that we were kind of inevitably going. And certainly these 2 episodes where the Doctor and Clara go to Victorian England, they spend the time in their setting with them. And we also see a lot of like surrounding characters, like the policeman keeps popping up and like different people pop up. They talk about like Jack the Ripper and stuff. It really did feel like they were setting up for that show. And I just am so curious, I wonder why they didn't do it.
Yeah. I mean, the behind the scenes of this whole era is messy. And there's all sorts of rumours about what was and wasn't happening. And Capaldi was actually quite critical of this era while he was still contracted to be working on it. He said at one point that he felt that the BBC was taking Doctor Who for granted. And he said that people look in and they think that's something that's looking after itself, but actually it's not being looked after. About the BBC, said, I think maybe their eye has been taken off the ball, or the show has not been seen as a thing they could just push around. It's not, it's a special thing. It frustrates me. He's talking about scheduling specifically. He says if you're going to have a family show, I think you have to build up a little ritual around it. And that ritual usually starts with having it on at the same time. Even I didn't know what time it was on. There needs to be a place for families to sit down and watch a show. It's a reference to how they shifted it around in the schedule. At some points, it would finish an episode post Watershed. It was often kind of shifted to fit around what worked for
Strictly. It's always around Strictly.
around Strictly. But I think the other thing that was happening as well is Stephen Moffat was doing this Sherlock, which I think he wanted to put more focus into, and a rumor was, I don't know if I can say what a rumor was, unsubstantiated rumor, was that he'd said to the BBC essentially that if he couldn't have total creative freedom to do the show the way he wanted to do it, in a more dark and more experimental way that was quite different to RTD's show, that he would basically leave the project behind and he would just start working on Sherlock, which is what led to Capaldi in the darker series. And then it moved on to Chibnall, obviously when they found him as a suitable replacement. So behind the scenes, I think there was a lot of things happening. I think around 2013, around the 50th, from everything I've heard, it sounds like Stephen Moffat wasn't especially enjoying being a showrunner, which could be total nonsense.
No, like it's not a secret that I think after the 50th he was just incredibly burnt out. And I've actually spoken just in my industry to people who know Stephen Moffat and have worked with him around this era, and it does sound like he was incredibly burnt out. I think that it's probably true to say that it wasn't necessarily going in the direction he wanted, and I think that he had built these two incredible empires. Like I don't think we can underestimate what Stephen Moffat did to build Doctor Who up. Like the popularity it rose from the regeneration from David Tennant into Matt Smith, and like say the opener for Series 6, like the growth it had just in that tiny period was huge. And then also to be show running Sherlock, which was another incredibly massive show at the time. Like it can't be understated the immense power he had. Speaking of Sherlock, actually, this episode is so Sherlocky. Like all the Paternoster gang stuff, it's so detective-y. It's so like, the case, and we're on the case, and da-da-da-da-da. And like the music itself feels quite Sherlocky as well. But I feel like you can see the two works kind of blending into one at points. And I definitely feel like there was an element of him being burnt out. And I'm not surprised. I'm kind of surprised, if anything, that he did as much as he did for the Capaldi era, given where he was at the time.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the Sherlock link to this story, but the Paternoster gang is almost a way to anchor it in the Victorian era that they can keep coming back to. And that line about, well, none of you are asking the right question. A dinosaur is burning in the middle of London. A dinosaur is burning in the middle of London. And you know what the question is? Have there been any similar murders? I was like, that is extremely Sherlock now I think about it.
Yeah, it really is.
But anyway, the reveal at the end is that Missy, we don't know she's Missy. We see Missy swirling around her paradise garden with the Clockwork Droid that is somehow resurrected in her paradise. And we don't know who she is. And there was a number of theories about who she might be and who the woman of the shop might be. And so I took a look on Reddit on a thread 10 years ago, and people were theorizing that this woman we saw could be the TARDIS herself, the TARDIS sort of becoming a personality. These are the same theories we recycle every few years, isn't it? Whenever there's a mystery character, we're like, right, it's one of these three people.
It's the TARDIS, it's River Song, it's Rose, or it's a future Doctor, or it's the Rani.
Oh, it's no, don't, because the second one is the Rani, because of course she's a morally ambiguous mad scientist.
Oh no, but I thought she was at the end when she was like, I think in the Sideman parts when she's being revealed as the Master, she's like, "Oh, you Doctor, you know me, you've known me forever." And I was there, and you know how much I want the Rani to come. I was like, "It's the Rani, it's the Rani, it's the Rani." And then she was like, "I couldn't call myself the Master." I was like, "Oh, Jill, like, fine, all right." Yeah.
The other theory that sent me completely west, so like the woman in the shop. It's Sally Sparrow, of course. I got chills, and I was like, "Oh, well, God. No. Well, no."
God bless you. God bless you. Well, we do know that this is an episode for callbacks, because the last thing I really want to talk about in this is the return of the Clockwork Droids. You haven't really spoken about it.
Oh, we didn't? Oh, no. They're great. They were one of the original ones that really scared me. We went through a phase where my mum would try and scare me by basically just like going limp and dangling her body from like the waist. Like she'd go like, what do I mean? She'd lean over. I can't describe the position she's in. She'd dangle. She'd bend at the waist and like dangle her arms down, right, with her head down, and
as if she's a turned off Clockwork Droid.
Pretend to be a turned off droid, basically, and then she would like slowly like come back up. And really freak me out. Let me demo this for you. Honestly, it was actually a really
let me see.
For a child. She would literally just go, I'd be like. I'd be like, no, Mum, stop it! Stop!
So for anyone listening to the audio versions podcast, Alasdair has just gone limp at the waist, put his arms and head down, and then very slowly lifted everything up into a static movement, almost like a Clockwork Droid.
I'd be like, Mum, stop it! Really mean thing to do.
That was
but
very
that just
mean,
shows what a family show it was at the time that Mum understood the references enough to pretend to be a monster.
It was. I get a little kick out of a returning. I always think it's nice for a returning monster for a new Doctor. Like, I like the Autons in the Ninth Doctor opening and stuff like that. But I loved all the references to like how it's the SS Marie Antoinette and they say the sister ship of the SS Madame de Pompadour to really solidify, because the whole point is the Doctor doesn't remember because he's regeneration resetting. He's like, oh, this is familiar. This is really familiar. Human. Droids using human parts to build them back together. Like, I know this. And he says sister ship of the SS Madame de Pompadour, because I feel like if he hadn't done that, it could potentially be like ambiguous. But because he says that, we're like, oh no, these are the same creatures. I do wish there was a little bit of a physical link. I like that obviously they've got flesh exteriors because it's kind of like the next level up from the original Clockwork Droids that were obviously in the French getup with the masks, because they wanted to use human parts to upgrade themselves. So it's nice to see that they sort of went past that. But I do wish, like, when we saw like the underface and stuff, maybe it was the same Clockwork face that was underneath the French ones. But I do get why they had to change it. But no, I really like that they had a returning villain. I like that every so often it's not really a ticking, but like a mechanical like clicking, like a.
Because it's really like it's I guess because the monsters we meet in the future are very sophisticated machinery. It's meant to be very beautiful and very intricate, and you can see it through a beautiful glass head. I suppose at this point it could be very well the same monster, same robot, but it's
Ship of Theseus.
So far removed at this point that it's recognizable to us as the same thing, but the ticks aren't right. You can't see any of the same mechanisms. It's all borrowed bits. Everything's rusty, little janky bits of eyeball.
Just as Moffat intended. Well, I don't know about you, I love that episode, but you know what else I love?
Wow.
A little game called Camp or Damp!
Oh my God. I would shout, but it's quite late at night and I am excited, but I won't be whooping and yelling.
That's very fair. Well, for anyone who hasn't listened to the podcast before, Camp or Damp is a little game we like to play where we look at moments in the episode we've just watched and say whether they're camp or whether they're damp. Alasdair, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Strax lobbing the newspaper, camp or damp?
Oh my God. Genuinely, I can't overstate. I think this is actually the funniest joke they've ever done on Doctor Who. I don't know why. It tickles me. It's just...
I love a bit of slapstick.
Shall I send it up? Sure, why not? Yeah! Just the sheer violence of yeah! It gets me. And just the slow motion arm throw, the way Jenna flies back, the way her hair flies. All just meticulous, beautiful, just perfect. Comedy gold,
Camp,
10 out of 10.
Campity, camp. Clara's Megalomania, camp or damp?
Camp. I didn't quite explain this point fully, but I think it's funny that in this series, in their bid to give Clara a more rounded personality, they also decided to insert a lot of new flaws that other characters would read out to her. So these are all flaws that I didn't notice in her character until people start calling her, you are an egomaniac and a control freak, throughout this episode. And I was like, these are not things I'd ever noticed before, but I suppose these are now established character elements.
There definitely is an element of that. And finally, Vastra's transference of oxygen, camp or damp?
Damp. I don't like it. I don't want to think about her alien lung sacs.
How many sacs of oxygen do you think she has?
Also, I don't like kisses and telly that are passed off as things, genetic transfers or other.
Yeah, exactly. There's always an element of like being like, oh, we've had an on-screen kiss. I'm like, that was meant to be mouth to mouth.
Like exactly. I don't want to see like CPR passed off as like, oh, it was a kiss, because it wasn't.
Because it's not. Well, I've also got a couple fun facts for you, Alasdair. So the new opening credits for this series was actually introduced based off of a fan-made video by Billy Hanshaw. Now, Stephen Moffat was so impressed by the video that he got in touch with Billy to get it recreated by the BBC Wales graphics.
I remember this. I do remember this. And I hate to say this, I think the fan one was better.
I don't know that I've seen it. I need to have a look.
I could be misremembering this. I think the concept is great, but something about these titles for me looks really flat. I can't explain what it is.
Do you know what it is for me? I think it's the very 2D photograph of the promo photo of Peter Capaldi, just like
it's a funny one. And also the TARDIS rendering, it doesn't look like a real thing in the titles.
Well, that's it as well. It's just very CG.
It just looks like a CG TARDIS. It doesn't look like a real box with real light. I'm sorry. You were like, oh, wasn't it a lovely thing? It was based on someone's idea. And I'm like, well, that was a bad idea and it looked cheap. That's not how I meant to conclude that point.
Oh, God. Another fun fact to move on from that.
Yeah.
This is the longest episode of Doctor Who outside of any special with a runtime of 76 minutes. So it's like an hour and a quarter long. It's so long. I don't really know what warranted it. I'm glad they did it, but I'm not really know what warranted it.
Me too. I don't know if there was just some like bumper budget that year because they did time of, day of, night of, and they all felt quite
cinematic,
deluxe, and they, I think, used the same VFX company as well to deliver the CGI as well, right through from the 50th anniversary to this one. I think I don't think they exist anymore. I think it was a VFX house called like Milk or something. And I remember seeing their show reels and being really impressed. And I think the VFX in this episode does generally look fantastic as well, and it's aged really, really well.
Yeah.
It has real cinematic quality.
It does. And finally, at the end of the story, the TARDIS brings the Doctor and Clara to Glasgow, which is Peter Capaldi's birthplace, which I thought was a very cute little tie.
Oh, it was. It was nearly as well the joke about dropping someone off in Aberdeen, wasn't it, as well?
I know, I did think that little... I didn't say it earlier, like when Clara was like, oh my God, has the Doctor abandoned me? I'm like, he's done it before.
He's done it before, you're not the first.
Well, off the back of that, I don't know about you. I think we need to stop saying what we're going to do next week unless we know for sure, because we always change our ideas. I would quite like to do the Crimson Horror, because I feel like I'm in a Paternoster mood, and I also feel like off the back of this one, like another Victorian England one. I don't know. Is there anything you're in the mood for?
I'll take your lead. I'll take the listener's lead. And it seems to be just kind of a couple days before What Do We Fancy? What feels fun?
Well, we've said before we want to do Orphan 55. We've had requests for more Sarah Jane Adventures. I'm in the mood for whatever. 55
keeps coming up and then being ditched at the last minute. I could do either. It could be either or.
You're just gonna have to tune in and find out next week, dear listener.
All right.
Well, in the meantime, I want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of Wholala. If you enjoyed the episode, please let us know. You can reach out to us on all of our social media. We're everywhere at Wholala Pod, which is Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and X. You can also watch old episodes of the podcast on our YouTube channel at Wholala Pod and email us your Doctor Who fanecdotes. That is on our email, which is wholalapod@gmail.com.
You sure can. And if you enjoyed this week's episode, you can rate us 5 stars. You can follow the podcast wherever you listen. You can find our Ko-fi, Ko-fi, and you can share this podcast with someone who might enjoy it, a friend who might like the episode we just listened to and want to chat about it with us. Whatever you do.
You're going to start like spitting tobacco and chewing gumbo.
Yeah.
And watch a lot of Disney, I guess.
Just felt the need to switch it up.
Well, speaking of switching it up, you can switch up our podcast to any other episode. We are now at episode 94, I think.
Oh my God.
We're getting close to the centenary. We're getting close to 100.
Centenary. It's our anniversary. Yes, if you if you're in the mood for something else, go and have a look at the back catalogue. We've got loads.
Exactly. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.
See you next week. See you then.
Bye.
Bye.